A massive Lakers trade is imminent as a brand new report has dropped from a notable reporter revealing some huge information surrounding Rob Pelinka and what he is cooking up right now. We're going to break down that new report and discuss what this means going forward as this changes everything as it pertains to the Lakers center search. Stay tuned for that in this episode, as well as a few other things, folks. Before we get into it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Lakers content, uploading multiple times a day for you all. And again, you guys have been an absolute beast with the support lately, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys again for your continued support over here, folks. A ton to go over today, and some brand new reports have dropped from Dave McMenamin, and it's almost started as a very interesting cycle, and then minutes ago, literally like 3 minutes ago as of recording, we finally have the truth behind this report. And let's kind of start with what has been going on and kind of festering tonight. So you can see here, not this original tweet, but the tweet below that. I spoke to a source with familiarity with the Lakers are thinking today, and they're weighing several trade scenarios, I'm told, to try to acquire this center. I don't have the names. I'll have the names later in the video. Stay tuned for that. Dave also added this: the Lakers had very keen interest in Brook Lopez. Once he came off the board, I'm told the thesis is youth and athleticism, switchable, young defenders, multiple bodies coming at you in waves, and they are trying to achieve a center that can play that way. And okay, so you started kind of thinking in your head. Dave McMenamin basically came out and said that a trade is going to be coming, and they're actively working on a trade, but he didn't have a name. And you can see this here. So a certain team is currently working on a trade, and when that trade goes through, there will be a surplus of center on that roster. And that surplus of center is who the Lakers would want to trade for. Who could it be? And it was reportedly the Phoenix Suns. As a bit after, shout out to Brett Siegel, always with the intel here. He says the Lakers have held trade talks with Phoenix on a Nick Richards trade per Brett Siegel. There's also some other names thrown in there, which will have videos coming out on probably tomorrow. But regardless, like Robert Williams, things like that. So they're interested in a lot of centers right now. Mark Williams, Nick Richards, and another one as well. But let's focus in on Nick Richards here, because despite all of this talk about them going after a big center, and speaking of which, I think the third center they're interested in is Yves Missy from the Pelicans. Definitely mispronounced that. But regardless, let's dive into this here, because again, he didn't have the names. Brett Siegel did. They're trying to acquire the center right now, and this is something that is an active, ongoing situation. And again, you can see this here. There was also reported by Mike A. Scotto as the team having interest in Nick Richards. And this now becomes very interesting, because Nick Richards is a guy who I had the Lakers, and were linked to the Lakers rather, at the trade deadline last year before he went to the Suns. Of course, he was with the Charlotte Hornets before that, and the Suns gave up some assets for him. Now they, of course, blew it up. Nick Richards is an extremely interesting player. Is he the center of the future? I wouldn't say so, but it seems now, following what has been a very interesting few days with the DeAndre Ayton sweepstakes situation, they're trying to get somebody who might not be, DeAndre Ayton. Maybe they're losing their faith in acquiring DeAndre Ayton, and that's why they're going for a guy like Nick Richards, who is exactly what Dave McMenamin said that the Lakers told him they're interested in a center, which is youth and athleticism and a switchable defender. Nick Richards is all of the above. He's a very good pick and roll target, but I'm not exactly sure what their plan is with this, because they could have went, and I mean, they still could get, Jackson Hayes back. He's almost a Jackson Hayes light to a degree, Jackson Hayes is like a Nick Richards light. And Nick Richards, of course, better, I think, in almost every facet of the game, maybe a bit worse of a paint defender, but even then, he's a very solid one at that. And you can see he started 34 games for the Suns last year, put up basically 10 points, like 9 points, 9 rebounds, and 0.8 blocks a game, was putting up 1.2 blocks against, the Hornets. He is not an offensive player, and he won't, doesn't have a post bag. He's basically strictly a pick and roll guy who doesn't shoot the ball and can have some sort of, he can do some things with pick and roll partners like he had even in Charlotte with LaMelo, and then, of course, I guess Devin Booker in Phoenix, Tyus Jones. With the Lakers, Luka Doncic would be, it would be fantastic for Nick Richards to sign or to get traded over and then probably, really start to thrive. I just don't know if this deal is enough to put him over the top. He is a very good player. I'm not arguing that. He's a very good center. I think on a championship team, though, this is more of a backup center option as it, pertains to the Lakers rather than a championship center. And I think, again, they're purveying the situation. Maybe DeAndre Ayton and Nick Richards would make some sense. I think that would be something that does make some sense. Robert Williams, kind of in the same vein here. I'm not sure Robert Williams is a starting caliber center on a championship team. And the Lakers do have championship aspirations, despite Rob Pelinka coming out and basically saying, or reports rather, coming out that Pelinka's trying to kind of wait for 2027 for a max free agent. You have to kind of go in now. And going from Nick Claxton and Walker Kessler down to, Nick Richards and, whoever else, I'm not a huge, fan of that. Now, would I prefer Nick Claxton versus Nick Richards? It kind of, I mean, I would prefer Nick Claxton, but if the cost is significantly higher for Nick Claxton, then maybe Nick Richards would make sense, especially given the assets that they have here. And you look at some of the free agents that are available, like in the center market, there isn't many left. DeAndre Ayton is the headliner, and I would like a DeAndre Ayton and Nick Richards offseason right now. I think that would be fine. But you have Dame Lillard, of course, headlining it. DeAndre Ayton, Al Horford, who the Lakers also have interested in. There's not many other centers like Thomas Bryant, sure. Larry Nance, I think would make a lot of sense, but there's not many centers out there. And Jackson Hayes in the middle of it. And of course, within the small tweet, at least Nick Richards wasn't even there because, of course, he is not a free agent. He would be acquired via trade. But it's interesting to me. And let me know down below because I'm very curious what your thoughts are specifically on the Nick Richards situation, because you start to look at the depth chart here. You have Jake LaRavia, who's going to be very solid at 3/4. You have Maxi Kleber as your starting center right now. If you're going into the season with Nick Richards and Maxi Kleber, I don't know if that's good enough. And of course, I mean, I'm pretty confident it isn't good enough as, at the center position. But at the same time, Nick Richards is a very effective player with what he does. And maybe they think Luka and LeBron could bring out the most, and even Austin Reaves in Nick Richards would then allow him to kind of maybe move up to 15 points a game. Problem is, he's more of a pick and roll guy. He's never really had to have any, sort of actual weight on him offensively. And I don't think the Lakers necessarily need somebody who, can create for themselves, especially when, it seems that they want young guys and bodies that can come in waves. They're not going to solve their long-term future problem at center, I don't think, this offseason, which is the crazy thing, or at least right now, considering the fact that Rob Pelinka came out right after the season and said, hey, we're going to do everything we can. I'm not sleeping until we address the center situation. At this point, like, obviously, hindsight's 2020, buyer's remorse, whatever. I feel like they should have probably stuck with the Mark Williams trade, and kind of just gone through with that, because he ultimately ended up getting traded anyway for 2 first-round picks and passed his physical. So who knows if the team could have been different last year as well. I would have probably preferred that rather than a guy like Nick Richards and almost kind of getting scraps. But that seems to be who Dave McMenamin is talking about. There was other rumblings about Walker Kessler and how he would make sense given this. I'm not entirely sure on that situation, but it could make some sense there. And we know that Shams, I'm going to keep bringing this up, the Lakers are prioritizing 2-year deals in free agency because they want to have space to offer a max contract in 2027. We're seeing a moment of truth between LeBron and the Lakers. And of course, LeBron's future is still a little bit murky. There's, rumblings. I mean, the Warriors, like, among favorites or the favorites to land LeBron in a trade. Like, it is dumb. But at the same time, the Lakers do need to show that they have the ability to make a winning team. And if Nick Richards is your center, your big addition, I don't know if that's enough. If it's Ayton and Richards, sure. If you get somebody else here and add Richards your backup, or even splitting time at the starting center position, sure. If he is your beast center that's supposed to take you to the promised land and win, I don't like that, and I don't like if it's going to be a gap year. But that'll wrap it up. We're keeping you up to date with all the latest news. Trades are imminent here, and we're going to keep you posted every step of the way. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on this. Do you want to see Nick Richards? Do you not? You guys are beasts. Thank you guys for watching. We will see you next time. Thank you guys for watching. Cheers.